Okay, folks, you know the drill. We will probably give you one more minute to allow for folks to join, but welcome to Coffee Chats. We'll start in about 1 minute. All right, well, on my watch, it says 8:31. So that means it is time for another Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. So welcome, everyone. I hope everyone is feeling healthy and safe right now. We have an amazing message today and presentation. But again, my name is Gary Clark, President and CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, and we are excited to bring you to another Coffee Chats. So with us today are two amazing individuals who are not only a part of our Economic Alliance leadership and Mrs. Lisa Lefebvre, who is actually the Chief Executive Officer for the Port of Everett. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for joining us. And then we also have Carl Wolbeck, who is actually the Chief of Operations. And I just learned from Lisa that Carl has been here and with the port for 29 years today. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
Folks, I want to just make sure before we have our panelists start that everyone remembers the housekeeping elements. We actually would like to make sure that you bring your voices and thoughts to the chat in the bottom. Make sure that you have provided your name and the information of who you work with so that as Lisa and Carl are answering or responding, they know who they're talking to. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Lisa and Carl. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, all. Thank you for having us this morning. It's an exciting time at the port and really just everywhere these days. I want to recognize Commissioner Simpson, who's joined us today on the Zoom. So we'll give him an opportunity if he has anything he'd like to say as we go through. So we're going to tag team this. Carl is the trade expert. He's been, as Gary mentioned, doing this for 29 years, and he has a lot of wealth of knowledge and has operated this facility that time. So I'm going to have him talk mostly about what's going on, what we're seeing at the Seaport from a boots on the ground perspective. But I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what's happening in the industry, what we're seeing, and why you can't get your couch. Don't buy furniture right now if you can avoid it or anything like that. So let me share my screen and I will kind of go through. This should be relatively quick. At the end of the presentation, we're happy to take questions, not only on Seaport, but also anything port related, should you have any questions. So with that, I think this is a great photo. I love this photo. It really shows the activity and the business here at the port. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our strategic investments and why we're seeing the activity levels we're seeing today. So here's a little bit of a supply chain overview. For a lot of people, their stuff just shows up. Amazon comes, they go to the grocery store, they get their stuff, they're happy. That hasn't really been happening lately, and a lot of it's tied to supply chain challenges. Many people don't know that 90% of the world's goods travel by ship. Whether it's import, export, it comes by the open ocean. About 10% come via air cargo, most of which is in passenger planes. And you can see a little bit, thanks to Kat and our team, Kate and Kyle, for the graphics. It's really pictures worth 1,000 words, showing how the whole logistic chain works. And more importantly, it actually does work in reverse as well. So containers, truck drivers, rail operators, customs agents, US Coast Guard, everything is integral to making the supply chain function effectively. This graphic I love. You know, there is a huge trend in the industry to go big ship ready. Essentially what the shippers, and I'll let Carl expand on this because he knows, lives and breathes it every day, but basically what happened is almost overnight, the shipping industry said, you know what, we're going to be more efficient. We're going to put more containers on fewer ships, but larger ships. But that communication didn't really, they didn't coordinate that with the US ports or any ports really. They just did it. And then all the seaports had to rush to become big ship ready. The practical application of that was that there's a handful of ports that were capable of handling these very large ships, which is, you see in D and E here, which are the new Panamax, and then the Panamax are the ships that are too big to even fit through the expanded Panama Canal. Because in 2014, the Panama Canal expanded and allowed for some of these larger ships to go through. Almost immediately after it opened, it was obsolete for the industry. So the Port of Everett has been working to prepare itself for larger ships, not the D&E class. We want to be more in the post-Panamax, which we're working towards and are in some respects. A lot of people, a lot of this is tied to investment, not only state investment, but mostly federal investment. So you can see down here in the past decade, the East Coast of the United States has gotten over $11 billion in federal investment. Our US West Coast ports have gotten $1 billion. That's a huge inequity. And what's happening is a lot of these large ships are captive to the US West Coast because of the size constraint of the Panama Canal and the fact that these shippers don't want to transit down below South America. So what have we been doing? We have invested close to $150 million over the last 10 years. We've put in terminal rail improvements. We've done rail extensions. We've upgraded our South Terminal, which was almost a $60 million project to strengthen the dock and add these post-Panamax cranes, which you see behind me, to be able to handle these larger vessels. And uniquely, actually, because we are a high value, oversized port, that's what we specialize in. Our operations team actually got these 53-foot spreaders, which allow us to handle the containers from Amazon behind us, which are 53 feet. Most containers are 20-foot equivalents. They're almost 3 times the size. Another key initiative that has been very public was our acquisition, strategic acquisition of the former Kimberly-Clark site to create a new 40-acre cargo terminal. If that was open today, it would be full. We are making very good progress. It's going to open at the end of the year, and we expect to have some very good business tied to that coming into the future. So what caused this? There's a lot of speculation. It wasn't just the pandemic. It was kind of the perfect storm, right? So we have the Ever Given, which got stuck in the Suez Canal, blocked a major trade lane for, Carl, how many was it? It was 8 days, 9 days?
I think it was 8 or 9 days, yep.
Again, it's an example of the ship size be a little bit too big for the infrastructure currently available and not keeping pace. We had a change in consumer buying habits. They shifted from, a just-in-case or just-in-time delivery system to a just-in-case, because you guys all remember the toilet paper debacle. Actually, I think it's probably more of an issue now than it was back in 2020. People were at home. They were easy to buy things on their phone. A lot of people were doing home improvement projects. So you saw a huge influx of lumber and other types of work that was done while people were making investments in their home because they were spending their entire day there. And that led to full warehouses and a container shortage. And then you've got workforce impacts through a pandemic where people are out sick and you had CDC quarantine guidelines. And so the end result is you started seeing ships start stacking up around harbors throughout the US, but particularly on the US West Coast. Around the Christmas time, I think we had about 9 ships at anchor. We're down to what, Carl? 7?
We're at 6.
We're at 6. That's good. So we're down to 6 ships at anchor waiting for a berth. I think LA Long Beach is somewhere in the 90 ships waiting for space. So we're seeing that trend happening. We're doing everything we can on our end to be able to move this supply chain through. And it all comes down to people, right? We have had quarantine. We have confusion on CDC, what CDC guidance is. Is it 5 days? Is it 14? Is it 10? Is it 7 days after a positive test? What it is, is there's no childcare. Schools close. People can't go to work because they're home stuck with their kids because they can't go to school. People are having trouble finding housing. People are scared to go back to work because they don't want to get sick and they can afford to not work. So we've had the quote unquote great resignation. And then you'd topple all that up with the inflation and the demand on the supply chain, and you kind of get to where we are. So with that, I will turn it over to Carl to talk the practical aspects of how that works and why.
So one thing that should be noted is that nobody in this business saw this coming. It caught everybody flat-footed. A lot of people are basically traditional customers that have been calling here with high and heavy and oversized cargoes. They basically decided to get in the container business. So we actually kept the same ship owners calling here on a regular basis. They just changed their cargo mix. So it actually happened that quickly. And the shortage in containers in Asia, another fallout of that is people were starting to look at if they can't put it in a container, can they put it in a what is called break bulk or not in a container and sling it in with pallets and stuff. And we've seen some of that too. A lot of that, it still hasn't started to ease, and really nobody knows how long this is going to last. But we are seeing, at least through this year, at least through the end of this year. And actually, some of these importers are caught so flat-footed that we're actually in discussions for some longer-term agreements to keep it going, so they don't get caught in this situation again. So, what have we done to mitigate all this? The big game changer for us was the opening of the South Terminal. We actually ended up getting those container cranes from the Port of Los Angeles, brought them up on a barge. The commissioners agreed to upgrade the South Terminal dock. It was an old pulp and paper dock, and it didn't have the strength, the deck capacity to handle those cranes or the equipment that needed to go out there and operate them. So we actually, when that facility became operational in April of this year, and they basically been working nonstop ever since to keep freight moving. So it's been quite good. We have had some issues like everybody else with labor. Most of the longshoremen work in Seattle, Everett, Tacoma, all the other ports in Puget Sound. Normally when we get surge capacity, they travel between ports. So if we have more work than we can handle, normally the people from Seattle or Tacoma come up here. What we've seen is all the ports are so busy and there's so much work and there's not enough longshoremen that we have to do it on our own, which our group has done a great job trying to keep up, but definitely more members are needed. And we actually are in the process of adding more longshore to our roles. There's currently roughly 50 in Everett. We'll be adding another 24, hopefully by March 1st. And then should this continue, which we expect it to, We should get another, maybe 20 or 30 later this year. So we are trying to work way out of it. And the key is a lot of these 53-foot containers, you can see them up front. We're doing work with Amazon, FedEx, JB Hunt, all those big containers you see on the road. Most of those are built in China. And most of the cranes, the other set of cranes that we have only have 40 feet between the legs. These new cranes we have actually 60 feet, so we can actually handle these containers. Before April, we couldn't have handled this, so it's been a real boom for us. We also have started doing some short sea shipping. We had some cargo come in from Asia, destined for Vancouver. They couldn't get in up there, so they brought a barge down and we loaded about 130 containers last week. So that's actually something new. And it's actually strategically, it's been something we've been trying to get into for quite some time. Next one. This is a good one. I hadn't seen this, just in time versus just in case. That's a great saying. I guess I don't read enough industry rags, but it's true. The whole supply chain was based on just in time, and then everybody had their shelves empty. So now it's just in case. So it didn't stop. Basically, everyone was getting nervous. So instead of slowing their purchases down to help mitigate the congestion, they kept on buying because they didn't know when they could get it. And that's going to continue, I think, because nobody wants to get caught again flat-footed. And as I mentioned, they are, besides putting in break bulk, they are buying their own containers. So they'll actually purchase the containers, have them built over in China, put cargo in them, come over here, and then they'll sell them to a broker. And then those containers turn around and get sold to the construction industry as storage. That's actually been happening quite a bit. I think I touched on this earlier. Our regular customers with the small vessels have been coming in here, and a good example, I think some of you might have seen in the paper, Rad Power Bikes. They're actually one of the first to get their own containers, charter a smaller ship, and bring it in here. And after that, it just kind of exploded. Now we're basically working with most of the large importers. And on top of that, we have a pretty good book of existing customers that we have to take care of. So we got to make sure that we're balancing all this new business while keeping our existing order book as well. So when this does go away, and it will someday, that we still have our regular core business that we can take care of. So that's another thing that we work with on a daily basis.
Carl, you also mentioned in a lot of, obviously we do trade with a lot of other countries other than China, but one of the things we have been seeing come out of China is that they aren't operating on a full manufacturing schedule due to the pandemic. So what used to be 7 days of operation, they're now operating most of their factories around 3, maybe 4 days. And so you're seeing a lag on that end too, which is why people are having a hard time getting their dishwashers and their equipment that is needed to be able to support housing construction, restaurant construction, all of that. So that's just another side note that kind of feeds into this whole thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, they have the Olympics coming up next week, so they're being really stringent on restrictions on ports and harbors and ships and people traveling. So it's not uncommon for them, if they get a few cases, to shut down an entire port for a few days, worried about COVID. So it's quite an interesting juggling act to keep this stuff moving. We are the third largest container port in the state of Washington. I always laugh at that because we're like way back there, but it is number 3.
Congressman Larson says a bronze is a bronze.
Yeah, this year has been unprecedented. When I got here, the Port of Everett exported logs and imported aluminum ore, and we exported fruit. And we're not in any of that business anymore. But we used to do maybe 125 log ships a year. Now we've basically surpassed that as far as vessel counts. We did over 20,000 containers this year versus 3,800 in 2020, which is insane. Over 500,000 tons of break bulk cargo, which we usually do like 200 to 300. So it's been quite a year. And also our traditional break bulk business is increasing as well. So a lot of that is related to energy, like power infrastructure, wind energy, oil and gas, manufacturing, as far as like machinery and equipment. We do forest products. We do export wood pulp comes out of Canada and goes into China, and they basically use that to make the cardboard boxes that the products are put into and shipped with. I saw a question here, somebody about lumber and logs. We used to export quite a bit of logs out of the port, but when President Trump started his trade war with China, one of the casualties of that was the log business. So the log business has really declined. There is still a little bit going to China and a little bit going to Japan, but we actually haven't had a log ship out of here since 2018, I don't think. We do a little bit of lumber. We used to export some lumber down to Australia, but that service went away. We have imported a little bit of plywood, which I think is kind of interesting, but we aren't doing a whole lot of forest products anymore besides the wood pulp. Agriculture, we've done some soybeans, chicken feed into Fiji and Papua New Guinea. We've done some hay into Japan to feed horses. That's an area that we're looking to expand upon in the agricultural export business.
Mhm.
So did I forget anything?
No, I think the only thing I would just mention is that you see the 20,000 containers. That's just container moves. As I mentioned and Carl mentioned, a lot of these, actually almost all of them are 53-foot containers. So that's the equivalent of 60,000 plus containers that would typically have gotten moved elsewhere. Strategic Seaport, that might be something you want to mention with the Navy.
Yeah, so there's only I think 18 ports in the United States, and I think 5 on the West Coast that's designated a strategic seaport, and that's basically to handle military conflicts. We basically agree that we'll dedicate roughly up to 15 acres within 48 hours if mobilization needs to happen. Which is actually, we did some tanks. You can see that picture in the lower left corner, imported from Korea this summer. It was basically a battalion that ended up going out by rail to a fort in Georgia. And we actually, we liaised with the military quite a bit. And, as things escalated in China, they wanted to add another port on the West Coast, and they picked us. So we're pretty happy about that. And we look forward to doing some more of that business in the coming years.
And Kimberly-Clark, the acquisition and the upcoming terminal that we're constructing was a key piece of that. That was the last piece of the puzzle we needed. We've been working on strategic seaport designation and infrastructure improvements since 2009 to earn that designation to be able to support the military complex as part of our seaport operation.
So where do we go from here? Obviously, we want, like I mentioned, we want to keep our existing customers happy. One of those is the guy that makes airplane up on the hill. It's funny. This is the slowest they've been since I've been here, 1993. The big product for us, as far as Boeing's concerned, is the 777. They make the fuselage sections in Japan, and then they bring them up here. We take them down to Mount Baker in South Everett and put them on rail and go up the hill. Well, 2 years ago, they were making 8 777s a month. Now they're down to 2. We also support the 767 and the 747, but the container mix on those is quite a bit less. So for us, as goes the 777 and the 777X goes Port of Everett. So a lot of these investment we made was basically to help continue to support that, because they're getting larger pieces and they're also going towards bigger vessels. So that helped drive our decision making as far as modernizing and upgrading our equipment to be able to handle that business. So when they do come back, and we, what you see in the papers, 2024 or 25, we'll be ready to continue to support them as we've done for quite some time. The big deal for us actually next year is opening the Norton Terminal. If you drive down on the waterfront, you can see we do have a contractor on site. They've started preloading the site and putting in utilities, lighting, power, drainage. That project is supposed to finish by the fourth quarter of this year. And they'll be ready to start moving cargo in there. So that's something we're really focusing on for later this year. The military, I touched on that a little bit. I think I touched on that other stuff as well.
And that's the opening. So the Seaport right now, because of the trade, has a very high multiplier effect. And so we have, our facilities support well over 35,000 jobs. For every one trade job, there's 4 jobs behind it. You can see that in the logistics chain. So we expect to add at least another 900 jobs to the waterfront when Norton Terminal opens this year. So that is where we stop, and happy to answer any questions that any of you may have across the board, whatever you'd like to know.
Hey, Lisa, I was wondering if Commissioner Simpson is on, if you wanted him to say a few words as we wait for questions to roll in, or totally up to you.
One thing, Lisa, if you don't mind, one thing I neglected to mention is we also have a shipyard on the waterfront. We actually had, those that have been around for a while, was Fisherman's Boat Shop that actually became Everett Shipyard that moved to the terminals. They were purchased by Vigor. Vigor ended up consolidating their business down in Seattle. And then last year, or no, actually it's been 2 years now, we made an agreement with Everett Ship Repair, which is actually a sister company to Nichols Brothers Boat Builders, and they brought in a dry dock, and they are supporting the commercial industry, Washington State ferries, and they're also working to get certification to work on Navy vessels. So that's another piece of business that we're focusing on.
Gary, thank you for giving me a minute to come on to the call this morning. I think Lisa and Carr did a great job sharing with you and the members on this call the vision of the Port Commission. And I think that as we move forward, there's some additional things that will be coming out. But for right now, I just want to thank you for inviting Lisa and Carr and myself to be on this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Simpson. We appreciate you all being here. I believe, Lisa, I have an initial question for you, and I just keep seeing some amazing news coming out about the port. Can you speak to some of the additional activities that you have on the economic development side that folks may not be aware of?
Sure. On the other business lines, is that?
Other business lines, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things the Ports Commission and staff have been really focused on over the last 10 plus years is making sure that we have a balanced waterfront, where we've got our working waterfront with the Seaport and the Navy, which is, we are the natural deep water port for Snohomish County. So it's a key hub. But there's also a huge quality of life piece, and you need both to have an economy and a community thrive, particularly on a waterfront. So on the other side of the port, I mean, obviously, I think we all wish that the geography was a little bit switched. So you come down to the bottom of downtown, and that's your waterfront development, and then the seaport's over the side. But that's just not how the geography of Everett was set up. So our waterfront development is actually to the north with Waterfront Place. We have just entered into agreements with 2 well-known developers. We've got the Schuster Group, which is going to be building our restaurant row. And we're going to have some exciting news, and I'll talk a little bit about that, in Fisherman's Harbor next to Hotel Indigo, and where our new housing has just opened, and the next tower is going to be opening this spring. And then moving outward onto the peninsula, we just entered into an agreement with exclusive negotiating agreement with LPC West, which is a amazing mixed-use developer, very well known, very capable, and we're going to be working on a ground lease to create over 200,000 square feet of new office. So that's going to be really our job hub, which is, for you guys who may not know, it's just right out in front of Scuttlebutt. And actually, I could probably share I'll show you in a minute, but it's the area right out in front of Scuttlebutt, and it's going to have additional housing, additional retail, but the big issue is going to be office and job center. We really need to have a waterfront where you can do the 5 things you can do year round, which is sleep, work, eat, drink, and recreate. And we're in a really unique position because, you know, we have the largest public marina on the West Coast. So we've got built-in demand. And so that, combined with the base's announcement of growing their fleet and their presence, it's really going to be, to use the nautical pun, all boats will rise with the tide, right? So a lot of exciting activities going on that front. We just announced, so Woods Coffee and Sound to Summit Brewing are coming in right next to 18th and West Marine View Drive, for really trying to hit the sailors, you know, want to, you know, need coffee in the morning and a beer in the afternoon or what have you. But and then shifting down, we've got Fisherman Jack's, which is an Asian dim sum fusion restaurant under construction, with South Fork Bakery, which makes really, really good desserts and cupcakes. And I'm sure a lot of other things. I just haven't tried it all, which is probably a good thing. And then we've got some yacht brokers coming in, as well as Freedom Boat Club, which is essentially a boat share. So you can buy into it and don't have to pay the moorage monthly. You just pay the membership and you can come check out a boat when you want to go out into the harbor. And then we're working on some leases for our wine walk. It's a little too soon to announce, but I expect next month we will have some announcements on additional tenants to the waterfront.
All right. All right. It looks like we've got some questions in the chat. I'm being primed by the awesome Katie Leone to ask if there are some surprising exports coming out of Snohomish County that we may not know about. So any surprising exports coming out of Snohomish County that the general public may not know about?
No, nothing surprising.
Nothing surprising.
No, most of what we're doing out of here that's from the county is mostly forest products. We did do some hay out of Eastern Washington and to Japan in containers, which we've never seen before. Most of that, and traditionally, has gone through Seattle or Tacoma. So that was something new and different.
Okay. And then additionally, it looks like Matt Smith, who is a former worker here at Economic Alliance, and we know he is enjoying his retirement here. I think this is Matt Smith from EASC. Matt asked a question about the moving of the shippers from 40 to 53 as far as the boxes. You want to engage on that?
No, that's a good question. The 53-foot containers are only for domestic use. So once they come in through us, they get put on trucks and rail and just move domestically. They don't go back and forth between here and Asia.
Okay. Okay. We also have a question from Doug, and Doug asks, does the significant increase in container volume translate to increased revenue as well?
Yeah, our record in the modern area, which is basically post-log, was in 2015 when we supported Shell's Alaska project. And I think we're going to break that. I haven't got the financials for this year, but I think we're going to have our best year for quite some time this year, revenue wise.
And
Awesome.
I might just add that that's really important. We, as you guys know, Carl mentioned, aerospace is down and they are our #1 customer. So we've lost significant revenues as a result. And we don't expect it to return, at least for the next year or two, to the level it was. And so this has really been a saving grace to be able to allow us to be able to continue to invest in capital projects and not delay any of our capital.
That's excellent information there and insight. I do see another question. This is tied to the Norton Terminal. How do we find out more information about the upcoming jobs, and where do we find that insight?
So we're hiring actually for apprentices right now. We've got helper positions, security. We are going to have some marina office workers. So you could check our website. The longshore, I have yet to figure out exactly how to find out how to apply for those jobs. So they do it as a lottery. Carl might be able to explain it a little bit, but they usually put out an ad in the Herald.
Yep.
So, and they don't tell us when they're going to do it. So you kind of have to just keep an eye out. And then we have actually, with Commissioner Simpson, we started an apprentice program. So if you're part of one of the laborers unions, all of our capital projects that are over $1 million, which most of them are, we have apprentice requirements. And so that'll help get more people into the field and also on Port of Everett jobs.
Okay. And I wanted to give you a little room, Lisa and Carl, if there was additional thoughts that you wanted to bring to the group after some of these questions, but we do have a few more questions as well. But
I just was, my senior planner just sent me a note and said, make sure you say, we've also got a planning position open too, and desperately need it. So if you know anybody.
All right. Let's see. The one I see in front of me here is from Sarah, who asks, when was the Port of Everett designated a strategic seaport by the U.S. military, and what other West Coast seaports have this designation?
I think it was in October of last year, October, November, something in that time frame. And I got to think, so in Puget Sound, Tacoma is a strategic seaport. San Diego is, and I think that's it on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yep. There might be one more in California, but I can't remember the other.
Okay.
Port. There's only one. There was only one in Washington State, and that was Tacoma before we were added.
I see. Now I see another question. This is more along the lines of the cell tower along the waterfront, if there's any plans of adding one. And the question is, if you're a Verizon wireless user and you've eaten at Scuttlebutt, which I actually have, if you find the dead spots there and signal questions. So
I will tell you, I have a Verizon and I get dead spots in my office. So if you ever try calling me and I'm like, okay, I can't talk to you right now, I'm gonna have to call you from my phone. I don't know if it's a reflection of the cell towers or if it's a reflection of our huge concrete building. And so I don't have any other cell phone issues offsite, but for in Waterfront Center. So we are aware and we're taking a look at that.
I will tell you one thing, just real quick, as we let a few more questions pop in. My first trip here from the Midwest to move here, I stayed at the Port of Everett. I stayed downtown there, and it was probably the most amazing view with the sunset coming in. And it was, I believe it was probably around April or so when I had kind of my first stay down there. And then when I was able to bring my family, that kind of sealed the deal for them being excited about Snohomish County. So it was the Port of Everett that sealed the deal for my kids. So I just wanted to put that little nugget in there that not only is it a tourist attraction, but also it is the deal maker for families wanting to relocate. So take your families and friends and people who are looking to relocate to the Port of Everett. All right, I see a few more questions here, but again, I want to throw it back to you, Lisa and Carl, if there's any other thoughts that have come up in the midst of all of our conversation.
So the only thing I would add is just, we talked a lot about the development side. We also have, I think one of the things that was very attractive probably to your family and your kids is the, being able to, we have the splash fountain, which probably wasn't open at that point, but everything the port does, we do it through a public access and environmental lens. So we integrate those two elements into all of our projects, whether it's the Seaport or the waterfront place. We've actually got a really cool project going on right now up north in between Everett and Marysville. It's our Blue Heron Slough project. It's about 75% complete, and it's going to create one of the largest salmon habitat recovery areas combined with the Tulalip Tribes project, I think on the West Coast. It's going to add 350 acres of salmon habitat, which is really critical to having them grow strong before they go out into the harbor so that it can help feed our resident orcas. And that project will be breaching the dikes later this year. And so that'll be an exciting environmental project for the community, and it actually doubles as an economic development tool, because if Washington State Department of Transportation or any cities within our watershed need to rebuild bridges or anything that affects the water, they can buy credits into the bank.
Okay. Lisa and Carl, there's an additional question from Robert. Basically, it says the Navy has added more ships to the Port of Everett. At what point does the Navy cap out with the number of ships? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think there's been some debating interpretations on their environmental impact statement. My recollection says that they're authorized for 13 ships at the base. Yeah, but there was a recalculation because initially the base opened as a carrier port. And so, for one aircraft carrier, it's about 3 destroyers, right? So I would say, if they get the 12 FFGXs, that would pretty well fill up the available space, I would think.
Okay, and then another question from Zach. This is more along the lines of the holiday season at the port. He has a question about how it went at the port, and he was a little bit curious about this year simply because of the low amounts of product from Snohomish County mall retailers they had. So I guess the question is, can you summarize the impact of the holiday season at the port?
So sorry, make sure I understand that. So that Snohomish County supply.
Snohomish County mall retailers had, so he's saying the low amounts of product that came there.
Yeah, so I'll let Carl add on to what I was going to say, but this is the what happens when big box suppliers, Walmart, Costco, Amazon, all start chartering their own ships and getting priority. And so all the smaller stores, the mom and pops, the retailers, their containers are stuck on a, mixed ship somewhere in the Pacific. It takes longer to get there because they don't have the volume and the clout to be able to get their products to market as fast. Carl, do you want to add anything on to that?
No, I think you covered it.
All right, and we have a great question from one of the best, Dan Ernestine of the city of Everett asked, love the Pacific Ice placemaking event. Was it a success?
I think Kat's on the call, but I would say yes. I mean, people loved it. It was packed. People would rent it out for birthday parties. They Our restaurants were always full, which is why we need more. It was very popular. It's, you know, something that people can do outside, and be able to, you know, enjoy the, actually, I don't know if it was the ice rink or the tree, which was the most popular, because everyone went down and got their Christmas photos there or their holiday photos. And we've gotten multiple messages saying, you know, please don't take the tree down. So Kate, I don't know, I see you popped on, if you have anything you want to add. It looks like she might not be able to. Here, I can ask you to I don't think you can unmute yourself.
No, thanks, Lisa. Yeah, Pacific Ice had thousands of people attend over the 2 months. You still have until the 1st to go skate. It's a super fun experience. And like Lisa said, the tree was also a huge hit. We see people down there still daily taking photos. And it's on our port side, which is coming out next week. So you'll see that on the cover as well.
Awesome.
And we're going to be adding holiday features. Each year we're going to build on the Pacific Ice festivities. So we'll add other lighted features throughout the facility as we move and grow.
Awesome. I see. I'll give just a few more questions and then give you an opportunity to kind of add some additional thoughts if you like. But I do want to ask the group who's here. We have a very large audience, huge interest in the Port of Everett, which is amazing. If you all remember when you were last at the Port of Everett, put that place and location and what you were doing in the chat as well, just for us to track that. And then also, Lisa and Carl, there's a quick question here. Congratulating you on the Panamex cranes. I think there was, this person said they missed the comments about how we acquired them at the Port of Everett. And so were they purchased new from China and transshipped through California? What's the detail on that?
So we got those, excuse me, we got those containers from a terminal down in the Port of Los Angeles, and we bought them for $1. We actually got some spare parts with it too that cost us around $250,000, but the big expense was the transport to get them up from down there to up here. And then of course, getting them operational. We had to do a lot of work on the cranes once we got them, because we had to replace the drive systems, which is basically the brains of the software that runs the cranes. And then we also had to replace some motors. So we had to do quite a bit of maintenance on them as well. But the actual cost of the cranes were $1 each.
Wow.
Total project, it's somewhere in the $8 to $10 million range, because transport on ocean going tugs can get pricey. But the reason we buy surplus is if we were to buy new, they would be anywhere, Carl, correct me, but anywhere between $12 to $14 million per crane. And so typically we've gotten our cranes out of Seattle, which our transportation costs are a lot less. But this one, they came out of LA.
So Lisa and Carl, what you're seeing in the chat is an amazing display of people who have been engaged with the Port of Everett. And I think that's pretty awesome to see the results there. So take a look at those, the engagement there. But I have another question for you all before we go into closing remarks. Simply put, if there's someone who knows very little about the Port of Everett and its impact economically to not only Snohomish County, but our region, what are some just basic thoughts? I know you gave some initial details early on, but just some basic thoughts that you want as takeaways for folks to remember, especially after today.
Yeah, I think that for me, obviously I love the port. I'm very passionate about the industry, and I always tell people that the Port of Everett is the only port in I view the entire world that everybody's connected to. And the reason is that who hasn't flown on a Boeing airplane, right? And we serve that role in the community. And so when we go to different events like this, I like people to know that, everything they do in their daily life is touched by a port, whether it's the Port of Everett or another port that you haven't heard of or haven't seen. We have 75 ports in Washington State. We are the largest port system in the entire nation. And every single port mirrors the economies in which they operate. So as Carl started, we were doing fruit and logs and lumber, and then it transitioned to aerospace and heavy equipment and military. And so ports are, I view, the heartbeat of economies, and almost every single recruitment that anyone will do, they will look at and say, do you have access to a deep water seaport, rail, highways, and airports? And so we're very fortunate in Snohomish County to have this asset in our backyard.
Thank you. Carl, you have anything to add on that point?
No, just there's a lot that goes down in the little port that I don't think people in the city really realize, but we're pretty busy down there.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess this is an opportunity for some additional closing remarks. Folks, if you would continue to engage on this, I think Katie will share this on our YouTube piece. So those folks who didn't get an opportunity to watch this, obviously there's an opportunity to do that and share it. But I would say just take a look at what's happening in the chat. I mean, that is just spectacular, and that speaks volumes to the work and impact that you all have had. I'm going to throw it to Carl and Lisa to give some closing remarks, and then, thank you very much for today. Go ahead, Lisa.
Carl, why don't you? I know you have to hop off here shortly, so I'll let you go first.
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to meet with your group. I appreciate all the questions. It's great that people are so interested in what we're doing. So thanks for inviting us to present.
And I echo Carl's comments. Love being here. I really enjoy these coffee chats. You can really touch a lot of people that can just pop in and get an update without having to travel. You could be in your, having your coffee in your pajamas if you wanted to and listen in. So I really do appreciate this opportunity. And Commissioner Simpson, I don't know if you have any closing remarks. You might need to be able to be unmuted. There we go.
I'm there. No, I don't. Just want to thank the Economic Alliance in Snohomish County for inviting the port, Lisa and Carl. Our team at the port, the commissioners and the port staff is behind every conversation that we're having today about what the port does. And I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simpson. Folks, please continue to engage. I think you've learned today a robust amount of information about the Port of Everett, obviously the impacts of our current shipping and logistics matters that take place, and why it matters that we also provide leverage and support to the port on the legislative end, as well as other opportunities to make sure that the funding is supported adequately. Lisa and Carl has to go, but Lisa, maybe Commissioner Simpson, if you'd be willing to, with all of these comments happening in the chat, Lisa, give us your seminal moment, your most exciting memory from the Port of Everett, and the same for Commissioner Simpson. Exciting moment, most exciting.
Oh, geez.
Hey, Carl.
Bye, Carl. Gosh, there's been so many. I've been at the port over 16 years now. We have so many different business lines. I mean, for me, it was probably the acquisition of Kimberly-Clark and being able to get that property. It is such a strategic asset for our working waterfront. We are not building any new port facilities in this country anymore. As our population grows, cargo volumes grow, that is and was, in my view, the single most, aside from the Weyerhaeuser acquisition back in 1998, was the single most important acquisition that the port has done, in my opinion. And then the second one was just a fun one, which was moving the historic Weyerhaeuser building. It was pretty cool to see that building get picked up and moved in the middle of the night. Funny story, we had thought people were going to come watch it. And so Kat and our team had donuts and coffee up at Grand Avenue Park, and everyone was going to come out and watch it. And a ton of people showed up, and we're like, wow, this is bigger than we thought. We need to go get more donuts. They weren't there to watch us. It was when the Pokemon thing was going on, and people were there chasing Pokemons. And they're like, hey, what's going on? So it was kind of a funny story, but I think those are probably some of the two highlights, but there's been many. There's never a dull moment at the port.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
And ever since I've been there from 2019, from November 2019, I have seen nothing but good projects moving forward. But the Riverside Business Park is one of the business parks that I was proud to be on when I first started as a commissioner. It created 900 jobs. All 5 sites. The port doesn't own any more property over there. It all belongs to the city of Everett. The infrastructure belongs to the city of Everett, but the projects belong to other FedEx, Amazon, a couple other companies. Even the county owns some property on their rail division out there. Proud of that facility. But as you heard from Lisa and Carla talk about other projects, economic development, jobs for our region. During a pandemic that we're going through, these are critical jobs that we are establishing from not only that would benefit the port, but it benefit our region. Beside from that, the funny part of when I first came on as commissioner, Kat Sophie approached me and said, hey, David, we want you to turn on the lights, the Christmas lights for our Christmas program. And that was my first time connecting with the port family. And she presented me with this 3-page presentation for that particular moment. I said, oh no, we have to reduce these words. So we had to go back and reduce those words, but we got it done. And that was kind of a funny part for me to work with Kat and her team and present the Port of Everett. I can't be in a better place right now in seeing our port, seeing Lisa present the port when she goes out and talk with other organizations, Carl and the port staff. We have a lot of things to be proud of, but we have the county, we have the city of Everett. We're working as a team, Economic Alliance, the CIC up in Arlington and Marysville. We're all working together to create jobs, and hopefully we'll come out of this epidemic more better than we were in 2020, first quarter 2020, when the pandemic first hit us, and the economy for us started changing. But we're doing great though.
Thank you. Those are amazing words from both of you. Thank you again for joining us today. This has been excellent. Since I've been here, I think that's the most chats I've seen. So you've made history for me, at least today, and lots of information. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Commissioner Simpson, and the Port of Everett. Thank you very much. We have coming up on February 1st at 8:30 a.m. another Coffee Chats opportunity, driving equity and inclusion. It'll be a very, very robust conversation, so please don't miss it. And we look forward to having you there. So we're going to clear screen so we can bring everyone in. You know what time it is. Thank you for the Coffee Chats moment. We're going to go ahead and bring everyone to our gallery. And I know some of you have drinks. If it's water, it's fine, but let's lift up our coffee cups in honor of Port of Everett. And thank you all for joining us today. Have an amazing Tuesday. Take care.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.